I think that there's an economic opportunity that's happening within the industry where this sort of evolution of how we grow food and who can access it and where it's done and how it's done is changing. People are becoming a lot more conscious about what they put into their bodies and how they consume the food that they're paying for. And that is something that is an opportunity for people to create jobs and for entrepreneurs to come to the table. So there's a lot of really great innovative stuff that's happening. I just think that the people that have been maybe negatively impacted by the food system should and will hopefully have a stronger role in influencing how it changes in the future.
Hey everyone, welcome to Nonprofit on the Rocks. My name is Matt Kamen, phenomenal host of the show and co-founder of Envision Consulting, which is a national nonprofit search and strategy company. And we are expanding like crazy, Ashley. I think we just got a new client in like Oklahoma and a client in Montana. I'm really proud of us. And to introduce you, Ashley Watterson, our OK producer. How you doing, Ashley?
Well, I haven't gotten out of bed, quite honestly, since I finished editing Sam's episode here. Because, Matt, what is the point? After you listen to someone who is 30, who has done as much as this woman has done, what is the point for the rest of us? I don't even know. Why do I bother getting out of bed? Like where she is at 30, I will never get to in my lifetime.
No, I agree. So this episode that our listener is going to hear is with Sam Lemfadli, who is the founder of this phenomenal organization. And yeah, she started it at like in like high school, I think, right? And has just kicked ass and is doing such a great job. And we talked to a lot of founders on this show. We made a lot of really great questions for her. And I got to tell you, audience listener of ours, I was blown away by Sam. She's just absolutely spectacular.
I'm always marveling at who we have, but someone this young, this accomplished is just like next level.
It's true. And I gotta tell you, like, I know that this season we're talking about nonprofits that are on the rocks and all the things that are going on, but she is like so the opposite of anything to do with on the rocks. Not only by the way did she not drink with me, but just her organization is nuts and it's gangbusters. So I was really, really happy to talk about how she got to where she is and how she got to be so successful as a founder.
100%. Okay, Matt, I have a burning question for you. This came up with some friends of mine, and I would be so curious to know what your answer is. So, if you were a celebrity and or had like hundreds of millions of dollars, okay, what would be your high-end ask? Would you be the guy that would like want the green M&Ms taken out of the bowl of M&Ms? What is your thing if you were going to be like hundreds of millions of dollars wealthy?
So let me just get this straight. If I'm rich and I'm adding a writer into my contract,
you could add a writer into your contract, or this could just be like, what would be your go-to thing?
here's the thing. I want to be really clear about this, Ashley. I am inherently lazy. And if I'm rich with hundreds of $1 millions in the bank, I am no longer working. There's no writer for me to add to a contract. There's no green M&Ms to take out. Like I am chilling on my yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. There'll be no more working for Matt Kamen ever again.
So a yacht is your go-to.
I'm going to be honest with you and our audience member. I was really hoping that this show, Nonprofit on the Rocks, was going to get me close to that yacht. And well, Ashley, it's not.
Wasn't the yacht the goal for like season 8? I thought we were giving it like 8 seasons before you were like yacht wealthy from the show.
I don't think you were listening. I need you to go back and rewind and listen to when I said that I am inherently lazy. And 8 seasons of this show sounds like way too much work.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. You were talking about 8 episodes is when you wanted to be yacht wealthy. My mistake.
Yeah, 8 episodes. So it's not working. But if we turn the question around to you, Ashley, and you had hundreds of millions of dollars and you could put a rider into your contract, I hope this has nothing to do with us. What would it be?
Honestly, if I had that kind of money, I would really just need it for 2 specific reasons. One, I would want a personal chef who would make me anything I wanted whenever I wanted, food and beverage wise. And then I would need the personal trainer on hand at all times to then help burn off all the calories that I had just consumed, right?
That's brilliant. So not only are you getting somebody to cook for you, but you're also getting somebody to work off those pounds. That's brilliant, Ashley. I love that idea.
That's it. But barring that, since that's not going to happen, I think that our friend Sam here has some really good plans that are a much better use of one's time and or money in the way that she's helping with sustainability. And I mean, here I'm talking about feeding my own face, and she's talking about, feeding the world. So I'm not sure if that's a great segue or not, or what that says about me, but Sam is amazing.
I mean, I think we all know what we need to know about you. So I think that's pretty clear.
You're right. You're right. And on that note, Matt, let us allow our listeners in to listen to Sam Lemfadli from Change Food for Good.
Hello, Sam Lemfadli. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's Friday, 7 p.m. your time, 4 p.m. my time. So you've had me start drinking early, which I think I deserve because it's to the end of the week.
There you go.
But thank you for that. I got to end the week a little early. What are you drinking tonight?
I have cantaloupe juice that I made from scratch. So that's going to be my little tonic for the evening.
Nice. And everybody's going to know that I'm going to get drunker and drunker because it's Friday. So a very big cheers to you, Sam. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Cheers.
Okay, so I will be perfectly honest with you. I am the worst when it comes to the environment and nature and all that good stuff. And that's what you are all about. So we're going to talk about your organization and you as a founder and why in the world you decided to be a founder and how you even pay yourself. And then we've got a lot of questions from our listeners out there across the country. And we actually have some really good ones. However, before we start, I would love it if you tell us a little bit about the nonprofit that you started.
Absolutely. So my name's Samia Lemfadli. Everyone calls me Sam. I created Change Food for Good, which is a nonprofit based in New York City that provides workforce training and educational programming to young adults that want to pursue careers in sustainable agriculture, technology, or construction. And I started it because I actually firsthand grew up dealing with different issues when it comes to poverty or food insecurity directly. And my family, having immigrated here from Morocco, was very big on self-sustainability and economic mobility, ways of self-sufficiency. So it kind of just sort of led me to this path of wanting to learn to grow my own food, which I ended up stumbling upon hydroponics in the process and on Pinterest actually, and then was just diving into it at 16 or 17. And in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, well, one day I'm going to build a nonprofit that's going to provide these type of food systems to people. But a few years later, actually, I ended up going into a workforce development boot camp that taught me how to code. I was in this program for 6 months. It was super intensive. And it actually got me very interested in how technology can contribute to the sustainability sector in a more tangible way to sort of change the sort of systemic issues that come with poverty and food insecurity. And so realizing the role that tech can play within sustainable food systems and that it was playing, I was like, okay, I want to be part of the workforce model that will help prepare people to use these systems to tackle food insecurities as a systemic concern, as opposed to the more individualistic level. And that's sort of evolved into the workforce and training program that we have now.
So I just want you to know, first of all, I'm beyond impressed. So I do have a few, just the first thing you said was Morocco. That's actually the first thing that came to my brain. So were you born there or were you born here?
I was born in the US. My mom actually immigrated here from Morocco.
Have you been?
I have when I was 9, and I'm hoping I can go back very soon. I want to see my family.
What city is your family
Casablanca.
in? Oh, Casablanca. So I love Morocco. And the reason why I'm sharing is there was a volcano eruption in Iceland in 2000, and I think 9, 10, or 11 around then. And I was in Morocco and we got stuck. And it
Was that the one it plumed across the world? Oh my God, you were stuck in Iceland in Morocco back then?
And when I say stuck, quote unquote, I was thrilled to be in Morocco.
It's a good place to be stuck.
Yeah. And so I got to spend an extra, I don't know, probably an extra week, which was awesome. And Casablanca wasn't on our list, but we ended up going to Casablanca, and I think Casablanca gets like a bad rap, but I gotta tell you, it was phenomenal. I am in love with that place. So like, and Fez was so cool. I bought so much stuff. Like, I love it. So like, you need to go back because it's an amazing country.
Yes, I want to now, especially as an adult now, explore it and really immerse because I was 9. I didn't really know Arabic as well. I was very shy back then. So I just felt like I literally didn't speak while I was there until like the last week of the whole month that I spent in Morocco with my family because I was just terrified and like culture shock. But now I'm in my Duolingo, I'm brushing up on my Arabic, I'm ready. Like we're going.
No, you gotta go. And one of my best friends actually who lives in New York, because you're based in the city, one of my best friends, her husband is from Morocco and has like a very like politically involved family in Rabat. And like just like, I mean, just
Connected
told
to
me
the
some,
king.
yeah, exactly, works with the king. So like I just, yeah, you gotta go back. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I digress. So how old were you when you said I'm starting this nonprofit?
Oh, probably like 17.
17.
I was a baby.
And how old were you when you actually started working on it?
Working on it probably when I was like 23, but I didn't officially launch until a few days before my 24th birthday, actually. But ironically, I feel like having known back in when I was like 17 that I was going to do this, I was looking for any and every opportunity I could to learn about nonprofits. So even when I moved out, I was 18 years old. I went to Florida and I ended up meeting a woman that had started a nonprofit for her son that had autism. And she was such a warrior, and her organization was named that Warriors for Autism. She was such a badass. I hope I can say that, but she taught me the ins and outs of at least starting it and getting your incorporation and how many board members you need and all those kinds of ins and out to begin with. And it just sort of set me on a path. If she can do it, I can do it. And then from there, I was volunteering at community gardens. I was doing as much as I could to learn little bits about entrepreneurship. I was asking my, service employers, like, can I manage a shift? Can I be a key holder? Just trying to take on as much responsibilities as I could as early as possible. And yeah, and then I ended up going to school. Went to college for business administration. I liked learning about business. I didn't like doing anything else. So I dropped out and then ended up going straight to work. And so then it just sort of led me continuously on this path to become a business owner one day. And yeah, now we're here.
All right. It's so impressive. Okay, so just to back up for a second, we've had the privilege of interviewing a ton of founders on this show. And I ask a lot of questions about, first of all, why, and then how, and then like all the things, right? And
Yeah.
so we'll get to that in this show, but like it's almost impossible to start your own nonprofit because, it's one thing to start a company, a for-profit, because then you're making money, you're selling things. But like a nonprofit, you got to raise the money and you got to go out there and get people to fund you. And it isn't that easy. And so I'm so impressed. And the thing that you said that I also want to just kind of highlight is, so you said you dropped out of college, right?
Yes, twice.
Right. Why did you go back?
I just wanted to finish my degree. I'm not big on giving up on things, but at the same time, I was very adamant that I was going to live on my own and make it and, find my way to become a business owner. And so work just kept pulling me back away from school, but I had it in my mind that I'm going to finish my degree and it's important to me to not give up on things.
Got it. Well, the reason I was asking is because I do not believe in any way that anybody needs a college degree at all to do anything. And when we're doing recruiting, I usually fight my clients. Be like, why does this person need to have a degree? Like, you don't need a degree to run a nonprofit or ask people for money. So, yeah, I'm curious if anything that you learned in college helped you to start your nonprofit.
Honestly, no, just to be transparent with you. And I agree, I'm on the same tip, especially because I spent the majority of my career never having needed a college degree or finding that nobody even ever asked, to be honest, in any of the roles that I was in, or even when I was starting my organization, it really wasn't a factor. I think for me, it's more so that one, I don't like the concept that sort of systemic issues that I've dealt with were a hindrance to accessing education at a level that I would have wanted to. So I think knowledge should be more evenly and equitably dispersed. College is one of the few ways that you can access it. And I'm not great at self-teaching generally. I need a classroom and a teacher and someone to ask questions to, just how I retain information better. But some people are really great at it and they find that they can teach themselves almost anything online. I can teach myself yoga online. I could teach myself like a coding or programming language, maybe if I'm being adventurous, but certain things that like if I want to learn about accounting fundamentals and different things that are crucial for a business, I think the area where you can sort of navigate best for me is probably finding a mentor. And thankfully, with the journey that I had with workforce development and meeting so many great people that were founders and building relationships with them, I ended up having good mentors, especially early in my career. So they were the ones that took me under their wing. And I was very honest with them from day one. I'm like, I know I'm working here as a talent placement coach and stuff, but I want to start my own nonprofit one day. Teach me everything, please. Task me with all the things. And at first, they probably thought I wasn't really serious, but then they were like, okay, let me roll the dice and here's a grant. Do you want to try to apply for it? Sure. And then we got the grant and now I'm like, oh, I got this. And it just kept evolving from there. Just having good mentors, I think, is a good meeting point if you don't have a degree.
No, I agree. Well, even if you have a degree, by the way, I think mentors are so important. So I have a question about your mission. It's something I really don't know, and I'd love it for you to educate me, but also the audience out there is how does sustainable agriculture contribute to your goals of addressing food insecurity?
Well, so it's a bit of a multi-pronged approach. So sustainable agriculture, I do think as a whole needs to continue to evolve, and there needs to be really strong, innovative, talented people at the front lines of doing that, and particularly people that have dealt with the systemic issues with poverty and food insecurity that are leading the way. So that's a bit of where I think the way that sustainable agriculture sort of plays a role, or otherwise that how people have been affected by food systems need to play a role in sustainable agriculture. But beyond that, I do think that the way that community gardens, for example, in New York City operate, a lot of food pantry and food relief systems in New York City operate, has made a really big difference for families that are dealing with food insecurity. It is a reliable way for them to be able to access things like fresh produce or things like items that are in emergency situations for them that go beyond the sort of like SNAP and EBT programs that are out there. A lot of people, myself included, when I was younger, were not big on those type of programs, particularly because there's different ways that they can sort of keep you in a box of staying in a food insecure on a poverty type of situation where you're not able to access FHA programs, you're not able to have off ramps that allow you to gain more economic mobility. So as much as it is an assistance, and it's one that I've tapped into before, I'm hoping that we have a more sustainable system, both economically and environmentally, where people are able to access the type of food systems that they want to build for themselves and distribute food and price it and market it and grow it how they might want to. Beyond that, I think that there's an economic opportunity that's happening within the industry where this sort of evolution of how we grow food and who can access it and where it's done and how it's done is changing. People are becoming a lot more conscious about what they put into their bodies and how they consume the food that they're paying for. And that is something that is an opportunity for people to create jobs and for entrepreneurs to come to the table. So there's a lot of really great innovative stuff that's happening. I just think that the people that have been maybe negatively impacted by the food system should and will hopefully have a stronger role in influencing how it changes in the future.
Thank you. That to me sounds amazing and incredible. And I love your vision. I know people who are out there don't understand food stamps and don't understand any of the programs that is government assistance for food and what it actually gets you and what it doesn't. So can you speak to what folks who are, food insecure and maybe getting government assistance or going to a soup kitchen or a food pantry, what aren't they getting? What is it that, or what are they getting? To keep them going?
I think at the end of the day, it's a really great program for people that are experiencing food insecurity. At the end of the day, if you can get food stamps and go to the grocery store and buy food, like that's a really great resource. Food pantries, on the other hand, they're really awesome for sort of non-perishable items for the most part. And I think that that's a really strong way to address food insecurity. But things like fresh produce, things like meat and dairy and eggs and kind of those staple items that are a little bit more difficult to access in food pantries are the ones that we start to respond to. So we actually do grow our food within the farm systems that we build that use hydroponic methods. We embed these specifically in schools, in people's homes, community gardens. We teach them how to design them, build them, maintain them, optimize them using technology. But more than that, more recently, we've launched a food relief program that is specifically tailored to your desire, to your request. So with traditional food relief programs or food pantries, for example, food fridges, you don't necessarily know what you're getting. You can't necessarily get, premium items or things that might be hard to refrigerate or whatever the case may be. With our food relief system, you're actually able to request the items that you want in the quantities that you want. If you have halal needs for meat and chicken, things like that, you can request that in whatever quantities that you want. And we tried our best to fulfill it. And thus far, I'm thankful that we've never had a request that we weren't able to fulfill unless it literally wasn't available in the store. Like peaches, at one point we had peaches and we couldn't get them. So things that I think are important because there's a lack of sometimes autonomy with folks that are experiencing food insecurity. It's sort of, you get what we have. And I can just share a quick story actually about how this was not necessarily even my experience. It was more so I worked at a vegan restaurant or a vegan cafe, basically. I saw that they were throwing out like 50 to 75 pounds of food a night. It was ridiculous. And it was so much, it was high quality, really good, amazing food. And to the point that when we were closing the store, the folks that would stay behind and were still in the store would just get it for free because it was the last minute and they're going to throw it out. So I basically asked my employer, can we donate this to the local soup kitchen and you guys can get a tax write-off instead of it being written off as waste? And they were like, yeah, sure, maybe, but we don't want to deal with it. So I literally took all of it because I also did food delivery drops at one point in my life. So I had the little refrigerated baggie and put everything into that bag, got on my little scooter and drove it over to Bowery Mission and donated it. And partly because when I would try to give it out to people that were on the street that were homeless, they were hesitant about it because they're like, why would this person want to give me this high quality premium food? There must be something wrong with it. And so we sort of do need a layer of trusted institution to be able to distribute at the same time as there should be a little bit more autonomy with what you want and, how you want it to be provided to you. So we're trying our best to respond to that with the model that we have. There's definitely areas that I want to see it continue to grow that, fingers crossed we'll be able to do in the future. But yeah, there's for sure gaps and it's understandable. It's just if you're in this situation, you sometimes want to have more choice and more say so in what you're being provided.
Of course. And I mean, we all, ultimately, I get to go to the store and I get to walk down every aisle and figure out what I want to get. And it should be the same way if you're making your own food or, I ran a homeless shelter in New Jersey and we had a soup kitchen and we had a food pantry. And, I was only able to give out, it wasn't, there was nothing fresh. And so that's what I love about what you're doing is that, the produce and just greens we just didn't have, right? So I think this is so important.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started a nonprofit. You're in that place now where it exists and you have like a phenomenal website and I hope you're paying yourself a paycheck and you have a board. So let's talk a little bit about you as a founder. What is something that happened that you had to deal with as a founder of a nonprofit that you had no idea was going to be standing in your way? Something that you're like, damn, I wish I had known that.
Oh Lord, so much stuff. Things I wish I would have known. One, I guess the biggest thing that's happened in my journey as a founder that I did not see coming was the pandemic. That was like what a wrench. But it was ironic because we had just gotten a little bit of traction. We did our first cohort of job training. It went well. People were getting into their jobs and all this stuff. And I'm like, we're going to take on the world. It's going to be great. And then the pandemic was hitting and it was like, oh, we got to change gears really quickly. But ironically, because I was already so grounded in technology and knowing that I wanted to have a team that worked remotely, I wanted the majority of our programs to be run remotely. We were already preparing to do our work on a remote basis. And then the pandemic was hitting and I was like, oh, we're good. We're going to be fine. But I didn't anticipate it lasting that long. But yeah, I think early on, it's just a matter of just staying the course and knowing what your North Star is. I feel grateful that I've had a really strong North Star for the first 5 years of my journey. So even with the pandemic, even with as many hurdles as we've had to go through, we still can bounce back because it's like, okay, we know why we're doing this. We know that it's going to help people. We know that the mission is bigger than even just New York City, I would say. I think it's about a broader conversation about food inequities and who's contributing to them and how they're contributing to it. So that's sort of what has kept me, able to deal with the punches. But yeah, probably the big one that threw me for a loop was the pandemic, where I was like, oh no, how do you just get your traction and then have to take so many steps back? But it ended up being more like a slingshot instead because we looked at it from a different lens.
But also, your services, I think, were even that much more needed and that much more important during COVID. Not to say that it's not anyway, but like I think during COVID especially, what you do is so important.
For sure, but so just for background, we had a budget of maybe $10,000 in 2020. So the ability for us to even do food relief, it was a non-starter. To do job training was a non-starter. The only thing that we could do was get contracts to do technology training and to really steward people into strong careers and give them the kind of relief services that they needed economically. And so we were hyper focused on that. It worked out really well. The people that we served did have really strong careers and started in tech. Working with our team and working with institutions that needed websites, needed digital marketing, needed different things to adapt to that paradigm shift. So we were prepared on that front. And because our model has been so interdisciplinary, it was a way for us to stay resilient and still grow despite watching all these crises happen. And I literally don't have the ability to help with this other than with the skills training. I can prepare you for what the economy is going to look like. And I can talk about how this is indicative of larger systemic issues that are going to continue to happen with our food system. So that's what we did. We did a lot of advocacy and a lot of work around what is wrong with our food system and how it's going to continue to be exacerbated by things like climate change. And so we just kept on working on that front, and it worked out well for us, I think. But yeah, watching so many people that were struggling and not being able to do more than employ them in a quality remote job, it was a definite challenge that we weren't prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I'm curious, you had a $10,000 budget and you keep saying we. So like who else was working with you at that point? Who was your team?
Oh my Lord. I had interns. That was pretty much my bread and butter. Okay, so for background, I worked at an organization called the Knowledge House. They're really awesome in the Bronx. And one of my jobs prior to me starting my organization was working on the workforce side for that organization. So I had a really deep understanding of how internship stipends were managed, and I managed their whole programs for that. So when the pandemic was hitting, I was able to sort of leverage those connections with internship stipends to make sure people were temporarily employed and then use those contracts that I got to keep them continuously employed. But yeah, that was my thing, was just working with interns and trying to keep them on as contractors for as long as I could.
Again, starting a nonprofit and doing it on your own and like anything you could possibly do, like that's the way you get it going. How big is your budget now?
Just under 500,000.
Okay. So it's a huge jump, by the way, in just a few years. It's a huge jump. It's a big deal.
You know, in the nonprofit world, that's nothing. That's small potatoes to most institutions. So,
Actually, that's actually not true. The
oh,
the vast majority of nonprofits in this country actually are all volunteer run and have like zero budget. The
oh
vast
my.
majority. Yeah. The ones that you hear about are big and
Yeah.
great, whatever. But you're at that point right now where you're there. And yes, it's a smaller budget, but you're so close. They're so close. And so those are some of the questions that I've collected from folks. Here's one of those questions that I got. I love this question. So this question comes from Tom, and actually Tom's in Iowa. I'm always so surprised when we have listeners in states that I'm like, oh, we have listeners there. But anyway, Tom in Iowa, and he says, can you discuss some of the sacrifices that you had to make in the early stages of building your nonprofit, and how you stayed focused, especially with any kind of financial constraints you were dealing with?
Yeah, sacrifices. I feel like I've kind of given up the majority of my 20s so I could build this organization. It's just funny. Sorry, I'm chuckling at the thought right now. In order for me to actually start the organization, a couple things I had to do. So I had to take a lot of risks. Like the normal full-time job sort of grind wasn't going to work if I wanted to build this organization. So even though I was trying little bits and pieces of it and, launching it in, I would say, doses, I guess, I was working full time at the Knowledge House at the same time. I obviously had my own need to build up a bit of a savings to invest in this work. So I actually ended up getting another full-time job at a tech company in Boston. I was working remotely with them at the same time as a project manager. And then I was picking up freelance gigs here and there for project managing a website build or building out a Squarespace, whatever, just as many projects as I could. So I was working like 90, 100 hours plus a week and just burning myself at all ends of the candle. I had to put in an enormous amount of hours. And then eventually I was able to take that experience, go to a workforce advocacy group called Jobs First NYC and negotiate with them. I knew they wanted a full-time person. They wanted to recruit me. I basically told them like, listen, I will do the job of a full-time employee for 20 hours a week. Hire me as a consultant, pay me as if I'm full-time. I'll worry about my benefits. I'll worry about all those kind of things, my taxes, whatever. But hire me for 20 hours a week. I will make sure I deliver up to 40 hours of work, and that way I can build my organization and let me have that freedom to go do what I need to do. And they were very much aware and supportive of me starting this organization. I was part of their coalitions and things like that. So thankfully, I was able to use that as a starting point for my organization. But it's an enormous amount of confidence in myself, really kind of giving up the normal, what a 20-year-old would love to do and party on the weekends and do all this kind of crazy stuff, whatever. But I always found a way. If I knew I was getting to a point that I was about to burn out, I would have a trip planned where it was like 5 days to go to Puerto Rico or whatever, so I could just recharge and come back strong. But yeah, I definitely had to give up a lot of time and energy and just a lot of letting people misunderstand you. Like, I think most of my friends didn't know what I was about to do in terms of starting my organization or understand why I was so adamant about working so hard. And they probably thought it was financial trouble or something. But I was like, no, I'm saving up to buy a house. I'm saving up to build this organization. I'm going to start a for-profit arm. I'm going to do consulting, and all of it worked out exactly how I planned it on that front, at least. But yeah, it just came with a lot of time and mental strain and patience that, most 23, 24-year-olds probably don't have.
No, do not have. And that's what's so impressive to me is like, so two questions. The first is, who instilled in you? Where did you learn this from? That self-confidence, the drive, the not giving up. Like, who do you thank for that?
For sure, my mom. She definitely is my role model when it comes to my work ethic. And she's always had that mentality of like, head down, do your work, get it done. Don't worry about any other noise around you. And she's also a big proponent for when I was growing up of being somebody that was building up enough skills and building up enough work and track record that people would come to me rather than me going out and begging for work or whatever the case may be. So that always kind of led me to a path of entrepreneurship, I would say. But yeah, she's definitely my work ethic model for sure. A lot of, I think, the confidence building side has been just trial and error. I've always been an adventurous spirit. So just trying to go out into the world and learn about things. I've learned that most people that we think know it all really don't know much. And it's not even that they fake it. I think they just lean on what they do know. And it's very easy to rest on your laurels if you stay with that. So if you just keep exploring and keep questioning and keep being willing to find out new things and know when you're wrong and bounce back from being wrong and pivot, and you can become somebody that's incredibly knowledgeable and experienced in a very short amount of time. And sometimes that also does mean challenging what you're seeing in front of you, which a lot of people that I know were excelling in their fields were able to do really well and find ways that they could point out like a flaw in a company, for example, and respond to that flaw and become somebody that was really valuable. So that was a lot of what instilled a lot of confidence in me was, how do I take a problem, create a solution for it? And instead of you being mad that I pointed out the problem, you're going to be happy that I solved the problem for you. And like, that just became my bread and butter.
How proud is your mom of you?
Oh my God, super proud. She's like my biggest cheerleader now. She
And
didn't understand it for the longest time. She was like, you are off in La La Land. It's all good. But eventually she was like, oh no, this is actually really cool.
and have you told her and thanked her for giving you the confidence to do this?
Absolutely, all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
I tell her all the time. She doesn't believe me. She'll say the opposite. She'll be like, no, I could never do what you did. She still doesn't get that I've been modeling it after her for a long time.
Yeah. Listen, I love that. Now, in terms of your social life and in terms of all the things that you gave up to, do this in your 20s, like, are you at least like enjoying yourself? Maybe like going out every once in a while? Do you have a dating life? Like, are you actually taking care of yourself?
Dating's interesting in this day and age, right? So I still have, I would say, like a good work-life balance. I think it always could get better. Right now, I think I'm more focused on trying to build what I can see now as the next step of my organization. So yeah, I am definitely trying to get out and explore more and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it is challenging to find people that understand what the work that I do is like and the challenges that come with it. So I kind of take my time when I meet new people now, as opposed to when I was younger, I'm a little bit more reserved. But yeah, it's still fun. I still get to meet really cool people in the work that I do. And I've met, I think, like every one of my heroes at this point and worked with them in some capacity, which I don't know that most people could say before they're 30. So that in and of itself is enough of a reward, I feel like, to keep me going.
Whenever I meet with anybody who wants to talk to me about becoming an executive director, right? Because I've done it and I recruit for a living and I like consult for a living and all the things, right? And I'm 48. So whenever anybody talks to me about being an executive director, what I always say is I forgot to enjoy my 30s. It's not that I didn't enjoy my 30s, but like I worked so hard that my 30s just went away, right? Like I'm now 48. However, I do always want to tell people you also have to take care of yourself, which is why you really should take some time to yourself. Being a founder is hard, you know. I appreciate that you would take trips to Puerto Rico and all the things that you did, but you know, if I can help you in any which way I can, you know,
You want to
send
find
me
me a
down.
man?
Yeah, I gotta find you a man. All right, so let's get back to our questions out there from the audience. So this question is from Bridget. You know, it's funny, I don't think I've ever met a Bridget before. So this question is from Bridget in Alaska. All right, that's pretty cool, Sam. That's pretty cool. We have listeners in Alaska.
We got Alaska.
We got Alaska. So Bridget is asking, what advice would you give to aspiring nonprofit leaders who want to embark on the same journey of founding a nonprofit?
A couple things. One, obviously, just go for it. Like, don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anybody kind of naysay you away from doing it. But definitely listen to the feedback and see if and where it is applicable. Because even if it's not necessarily applicable to you in this moment, there may be times where it'll become relevant or necessary to sort of respond to that feedback or pivot. So always be listening, always be observing, but definitely tune out noise when it's necessary and just go full stream ahead. The other thing I would say is when it comes to nonprofits, a lot of times, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but I feel like it operates almost like a two-pronged business. You are going to go out and secure contracts for the work that you do. You are providing a service that is valuable, just like a for-profit might do. And so if you're a revenue generating nonprofit, that is something that can be a little bit easier, at least for someone like me. Like you mentioned, raising funds and philanthropy can be very difficult to navigate sometimes. So having earned revenue is really important, especially if you're getting started from zero like I was. Getting those contracts will at least be able to sustain you. When you're in that process, figure out what your bottom line is going to be, figure out what your costs are going to look like, and then price your programs or price your services twice the amount that you think your bottom line is going to be, so that you have some breathing room between your contracts or, you know, between the grants that you might get. Know that if you're doing contract work, especially with like any government agencies or even getting grants from government agencies, you will have delays with getting paid, sometimes significant delays. So you're going to need to build up cash reserves and your credit to be able to weather that. And then just don't panic. You will get paid. Like, just don't panic. That's probably the biggest lesson overall when it comes to nonprofit work, period. Whatever happens, try not to panic. Like, it's usually something that you can recover from. You can figure out a solution for if you're patient, and just don't respond to things emotionally. It's very difficult to do, especially in nonprofit work, because sometimes the work is so personally tied, especially if you have firsthand experience with these issues. It'll be sometimes very personal for you, but try your best not to be emotional or panic when things go wrong or they don't go as planned. And try to think of it as a business. Try to think of it as, I have a service, I have a product, or I have a resource that is valuable. I'm going to figure out the best way to price and value that service so that the people that are interested in providing that service are willing to work with me. And view that the same way when it comes to philanthropy too, because ultimately they're looking for the best potential candidate to invest in. Even with philanthropic dollars, even though it is a grant, it's still an investment in the best potential candidate to deliver that service. If you think of it that way and know that your service is valuable and really ground yourself in that principle, I think you're going to be fine and just manage the hurdles that come with it.
And we will be right back. Are you a board member, a challenged chairperson, or an exhausted executive, tired of training and retraining and, well, you get it. Fear not, we've got the remedy you never knew you needed. Introducing Cause Coaching by Envision Consulting, because even boards need a little therapy sometimes. After countless hours of decoding the board member enigma with hundreds of nonprofits across the country, we proudly present a subscription-based board recruiting and development tool that's even more brilliant than our last brainchild, CauseCupid. Picture this: personal coaching sessions that make your board problems shrink faster than your inbox after a spam purge. Live training sessions that are more helpful than GPS in a corn maze. Video and resource libraries so extensive they'll make your Netflix queue jealous. And if that's not enough, you'll also get exclusive access to CauseCupid mixers, the board matching equivalent of FarmersOnly.com. Subscribe now to Cause Coaching and watch your board transform from a group of ineffective amateurs to a powerhouse team of nonprofit virtuosos. Visit envisionnonprofit.com and let the journey to excellence begin. Warning: side effects may include increased productivity and efficiency, enhanced fundraising success, improved governance, stronger relationships, adaptability to change, and talent attraction and retention. And now back to the show.
I love the Don't Panic. I was actually thinking, what would be a cool title for this show. And first of all, Don't Panic just makes me so happy because it is like so much work to start a nonprofit and to keep it going. And where you are, like the fact that you already know you're working on your next strategic vision and plan. I mean, it's crazy, lady. People like you don't come around very often. So, just know that. Okay, I have a lot of friends who are founders of nonprofits. So my question, this is coming from me personally. Yeah. When is it okay for a friend to say, hey, I believe in your nonprofit, but I have so many other nonprofits to support. I can't financially support you anymore. When do you as a founder not take it personally when your friends are like, you know what, I have other nonprofits to support? Or what is fair for you as a founder to expect from your friends?
If I'm being honest with you, I sort of never really expected my friends to, and not because I don't appreciate when they are supportive or anything like that, but I just think that going into it, you can't have that mentality that people have to support you because they know you or they care about you or they like what you're doing. Even they might hit all those check marks, but ultimately the thing that's going to drive them is whatever their personal motivations are. And you as a founder or anybody, you can't necessarily cater to everybody's personal motivations. It'll be just a never-ending game of people pleasing. It's a dead end. So I feel like going into it, I kind of had this mentality of I'm going to plant my own seeds so that I can give myself flowers so that if nobody ever does, I have my own flowers. And it was that mentality of I know I'm going to give flowers to everybody that I can, but I'm never going to expect it back. And then that way, if I do get it, it's that much more precious and valuable. And that's happened so many times. I'm not great at event planning, for example. I don't like planning events. I don't like marketing or promoting it and all this type of stuff. And then we had this event that was so poorly marketed on my part. It was just, I was so spread thin. I couldn't even get everybody to, sign up for it or whatever. They did donate though, which was nice. And then I had friends that were watching my journey on social media and all this stuff I had no idea they were silently supporting, and they just showed up and ran with us and all this type of stuff. And it was such a beautiful experience just to know that even if you don't see it, people are still cheering you on. So yeah, I love that. I love surprise support more than expected support, if anything. And yeah, I think that people come around too. I think a lot of people have a lot of cynicism, especially in my life and my world. A lot of the folks that I grew up with dealt with the same issues and experiences that I did, or sometimes even worse. So they have a lot of cynicism when it comes to nonprofits. I have a lot of cynicism when it comes to nonprofits because I've experienced the other side of it. And, so there's a lot of ways that you can look like you're doing a lot of good work and then not deliver. So I think a lot of times people will look at what you're doing and try to actually see, is it really valuable? Is it really this? Is it really that? And you can only show so much on social media. They have to be willing to come into your world and see all the nuances of what you don't get to show off online. For example, there's stories that I would never share on social media of students that have told me I've saved their life, I've changed their life, I've saved them from being on the street or whatever the case is. I'm never going to share that online, for example, but it'll keep you going and it'll make you know that you're doing the right thing. But, it's up to the people that care about you and love you to come into your world and step aside from the cynicism, suspend their disbelief for a few minutes and see what it's really about. And I think that will make them come around. But forcing it on them is never going to work. I'm not a big fan of forcing support.
I'm very, very, very impressed that you that's just the drive that you have. It's pretty spectacular. So I did a little bit of research,
Oh.
and what I found, and you tell me if this is correct, but what I found is that the average age of farmers here in the United States is 57 years old. And obviously, at the same time, the global population, as it is growing, is increasing its demand for food. And so, what that says to me is that we have to bring young people into this field. Like, we have to bring them into this food world, right? And so, my question is like, how do you teach kids, high school, college, whatever it is, to move into the food, agriculture, whatever it is? How do you give them the desire to do that?
It's challenging. I'll tell you that. No, I think that there's a few things that will speak to certain people and it won't speak to others. One of the things that we notice is I can't remember the exact stat. It's something like 1.3 trillion or a ridiculous number of dollars that's about to be transferred in wealth from the baby boomer generation to now millennials and Gen X or Gen Z. That's happening in the next coming years. A lot of that is our landowners and folks that were farmers and folks that have access to assets like land that is about to transfer over. That's an enormous economic opportunity to shift systemic issues within poverty that is just overlooked. And even if you were to be able to do that, if you don't know what you're getting into when it comes to farming or agriculture or any of the systems that we're talking about, you're going to have an enormous amount of challenges. So I think that there are economic opportunities that are going unnoticed or not really very much talked about. And even if they are, there are so many hurdles that come with it that require an enormous network of support. You cannot manage or run a farm operation, even if it's small, on your own. It is incredibly intensive. So that's what we're sort of trying to embed into people, is that there are more opportunities than people really realize, whether we're talking about that wealth transfer aspect in terms of agriculture or with the technology immersions that are happening in these sectors. So there's definitely opportunities that I think if you're someone that is very adamant about overcoming poverty or challenging sort of systemic issues, it'll speak to you. The other side that a lot of young people are already keenly aware of, but I think, again, sometimes feel a little bit beaten down by, is that there's so many issues within our food system that most people are just not happy with the way our food is grown, the way it's distributed, the way it's priced, like who manages it, who owns it, whatever. They're just not very happy with the system as it is. And I think for them, the ones that are sort of dissatisfied with how the system operates currently, things like localized food systems, hydroponics, worker-owned co-ops that are, partners of ours that we work with, all those kind of things speak to the issues and the things that they care about a lot. And then lastly, we do obviously incentivize our programs with stipends, and then, post-program, we do subsidize employment within our program. So whether we're talking about our high school programs or our job training, which is for older youth like 18 to 24, those are programs that are then eligible for a 3-month, $17 an hour paid internship for 20 hours a week, working on things like website building or farm management, farm maintenance on small scale farms in our schools or in community gardens and things like that. So we're trying as much as possible to practice what we preach and be able to provide economic opportunities. Even beyond our stipends, if you do succeed in our internship program, we do prioritize you for employment. Most of our jobs start at $20 an hour and up. Lately, it's been more like 25. So it's definitely something that if we want to encourage young people to get into a sector that is as intensive as agriculture or technology, we have to sort of back up what we're saying with bringing the opportunities to them. So we try to do that as much as possible, and that usually resonates with people, but it's for sure challenging, especially right now. Young people are very much disillusioned with the system as it is, and it's very difficult to get through to them. So, and you can only tell them so much. You got to just at some point show them, give them the skills. And even if today it's not something that immediately resonates, it will stay with them. And in the event of, they wake up one day and they're like, I want to start my own farm operation, we already have an immediate subset of skills to work with.
Yeah, just the more that you talk, the more impressed I am by you, truly. Like, so impressed. So one of my favorite questions to ask in an interview is, would you rather be lucky or skillful? And me personally, all day long, I'd rather be lucky, because I could be the best recruiter in the world, right? But like, What if I, met somebody at a fair who was like the person? That's luck, right? Or, I can be the hardest working person in the world, but if I won the lottery and I made $1 billion, like think, right? So I'm curious because I talk to a lot of people who started nonprofits or corporations. In the time that you've been building up this nonprofit, was there something that was just lucky that just happened that really helped you?
Oh my God, so many things. There's been so many lucky moments, especially early on. It's kind of crazy. But one instance was I went to this really just random conference. It was like an innocuous thing. I've been to so many of these conferences for work and all this stuff. But I was now there as an aspiring founder. And I was like, I'm going to make connections. I don't know how or where or whatever. I think I snuck into like some executive speaking part or whatever. There's a separate speaking engagement hall, whatever. And there were some folks there that, I thought I was going to connect with, didn't end up making a strong connection. So I'm walking away, trying not to, be tail between my legs or whatever. And as I'm walking away, I see this woman that's now walking almost beside me. And I was like, hey, did you enjoy the speaking thing? She's like, yeah, I'm kind of used to this stuff or whatever, blah, blah. She had the same kind of impression as me. And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to start my own organization. And it's just, I thought I would be able to connect with so-and-so, but it didn't work out. It's like, really, tell me about your organization. So I started telling her, and she ended up being our first funder. I didn't know that she was a funder, but I just like was randomly having this nice little conversation with her. But it was just the most random thing. And we just connected so organically. And it was almost exactly the same thing that I've done 1,000 times before that. It just happened that worked out that way. So it was a lucky little moment for sure. Like,
Luck matters. I mean, sure, certain things you could manifest, certain things you can't, but like that matters. It's my favorite question, like I said, to ask in an interview. And that's pretty spectacular. You got your first funder just for walking out of a conference, right?
and she was
Great.
one that I actually really wanted to connect with too. I was like, oh, once I realized who she was, I was like, stay calm. Like, stay calm.
Big deal. All right.
Yeah.
So I got another question from Todd in Georgia. Again, all these places. I love it. I love it. I love it. So Todd sent like a little bit of an email and like, he's also an aspiring nonprofit founder. And one of the things that he wanted to know is what's one of your most proud achievements as a founder?
Oh, okay. I got a few. Okay, so again, story time. I hope it's not like too lengthy, but one of the things I got to do prior to starting the organization was I went through this program through it's similar to like Upward Bound. You go to Kenya for a month, you kind of live amongst the locals and camp in the Maasai plains with the Maasai men and all this type of crazy stuff for a month. And you do intensive training like every day at like 5 or 6 in the morning. We're running like 2 kilometers or something like that, whatever, break it on. Intensive training, but all of it is leading up to climbing Kilimanjaro, which we ended up getting to do. I didn't get to summit. Nobody got to summit that year specifically, but in that journey was when I was just certain that I was going to start my organization. Like part of the whole program basically is to kind of prepare you for leadership. They believe that you're somebody that's capable of being a leader in your community. They want to invest in you by having you climb this mountain and all this crazy stuff. So it was a super fun experience. But in the process, actually, I met a lot of amazing local folks that in Kenya and in Tanzania actually that were dealing with issues when it comes to climate caused drought. I saw firsthand exactly what that looked like for them and saw massive fields that used to be well irrigated and arable soil and all that type of stuff. And now was completely like not arable, was completely desert. And it was starting to become a state of emergency for them. So I knew that hydroponics could help with this. I learned that they had a solar grid, solar power, all this type of stuff. And when I was sharing it with the folks that were in this program with me, the women specifically that were like farmers already, they were like, oh, you got to bring this hydroponic stuff to Kenya. Like, come on, we need this and that. Like they were so excited about it. So I made a promise right there and then, like one of these days when I, get my program established, I'm going to come back to Kenya and I'm going to build out this farm system and we're going to do hydroponic growing. And we're going to start tackle food insecurity in Kenya and use less water. And we're going to be so sustainable and all this type of stuff. And I thought it would be like, maybe $10,000 in like 2 years. Like it was obviously it took so much longer than that. It took about 5 years actually. But it took years later, we raised the money. We launched the farm system last year in September on a school campus in Kenya. One of the women that I met in that program, Jane Mutoni, who was a farmer that was also part of the Kilimanjaro program. She's now the head farmer for our farm system in Nairobi. And Steve, who was our program manager in that program as well, he was an amazing like mentor of mine. He basically was like our fixer on the ground. He became our sort of site project manager, basically. So now he communicates with our team almost daily, reports out. We do trainings year round now with the students. We distribute our food. We're growing close to like 13,000 heads of kumawiki, which is basically like spinach kale hybrid on that site annually. We're doing it soilless. We're doing it with solar power. We're doing it with rainwater. So yeah, it ended up that, like I said earlier, the North Star that I was sort of like looking at in my head the whole time was like, we're going to get to Kenya, we're going to build this out. And the people that really genuinely need this farm system are going to be able to access it. And we're going to employ people, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we can. And we named that system Pole Pole after the climb. Because when you're climbing up the Kilimanjaro mountain, the guides, they'll shout out to you, Pole Pole, which means slow, 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 slow. So in order to get to the top, you got to go nice and slow, nice and slow. So, and that's
I mean, literally every story, I'm even more impressed. And the fact that, yeah, I mean, the fact that you climb Mount Kilimanjaro and like, just like, whatever, I did that. That's I mean,
oh my God, it was crazy.
that's nuts. What was it like?
Oh my God, it was insane. It was so beautiful, like drop dead gorgeous views. Specifically, this one day in particular, like at the crack of dawn, it'll be like painted blue.
Huh.
Painted like this sort of navy blue. It was just absolutely drop dead gorgeous and such an amazing experience. I got to meet so many crazy, amazing people, people from all types of walks of life that I would have never been able to interact with. It was completely life-changing. Like there were so many personal challenges too that I was able to basically leave on the mountain and just be like, you know what? When I come back, this is a new start, and I'm gonna make sure I like fulfill the type of person that I want to be, which is this founder and like contribute to the world and all these different things. And I just didn't want to let all the negative stuff that I went through in my journey like hold me back. And that journey was absolutely transformative for me. I suggest to everybody, you guys do it if you get a chance to go climb that mountain, literally or figuratively. So
I'd probably get like 10 feet up and I'd be like, okay, well, it's been fun. Oh yeah.
Lord.
I mean, just getting there, I guess. So I think, again, being a founder is a big deal, but at some point, like you can't be at the same place forever. So at what point do you see this organization being so successful and having like accomplished whatever it is that you can see that you'll be ready to say, all right, we're going to hire an executive director. I'm going to step away and do the next thing.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I honestly haven't thought about it just because it's like you've probably been there. Like you're so deep in like making the organization work and like trying to build it up to something that can stand on its own too. That you never I haven't really thought about it, honestly. I think that where I'd like to see the organization grow is where we don't necessarily have to be tied solely to whatever labor force that we have. So part of that is like the things that we're venturing into now, which is like virtualizing our learning model, gamifying our learning model, which I'm very excited about. We've been building a tech product separate from that for the last 5 years that I'm hoping that we can launch this year for sale. And that I hope will be like a revenue generator for the organization, and also a job creator for our students. It's been a job creator already for our students for quite some time now, but I'd like to continue to see it do that. But that's sort of the direction I'd like to go in, where we're not operating like the traditional nonprofit that like, needs an enormous amount of like physical capital or land capital. I'd like it to be something that's accessible for everybody, formatted in a way that's like engaging and like really responding to how young people are learning now, which is in edutainment basically, and like gamified learning and all those kind of things, and make it really exciting. So we've been now on this journey for the last like year of figuring out how that's going to work and building out demos that I'm very excited to start testing out soon. But yeah, that's what sort of where I see it going. I don't know when and where yet that line would become like, I'm ready to not be the ED yet. I probably should think about that. Maybe I've probably been too early in my journey to think about it right now. So
yeah. Nah, you don't have to think about it now. It's just one of it is important as a founder, especially with founder syndrome issues, that like, you do it and you get it where it needs to go, and then you move on to the next thing, right? And you let somebody else take over, which is so hard for a founder, right? Because this is your baby. This is something you started when you were like, an infant. But like being a founder is great. And at some point you stand in the way of the organization at some point. And so, whenever that is, that's definitely not now, by the way. Like that's not even close. But when you think about like, oh my God, I've done it. I've done it. I think it's at that point that you're like, okay, now somebody else gets to come in and take over, you know? So when you and I had originally chatted, we had decided we were going to call this show Size Matters, which cracks me up so
Yeah.
much. And the last question that I have is, so you have a $500,000 budget, which by the way, again, is not small. Like it's a big deal that you're there. What do you think? Like, let's just say you get to like 5 million or 10 million, right? What are some of the things that you'll be able to do as a nonprofit that you cannot do now because of the size?
Well, one, I definitely would like to scale nationally. I'd like to see hubs in major cities for Change Food for Good, where we're able to spread out our programming and have people embed food systems locally that are integrated with technologies and have a workforce model that supports it. That I think is where we're probably going to go with it. I'd also love to see like our international work. Like right now, our international work is limited to just Kenya, which is amazing and I love it. But I think that the work of hydroponics and how it can really transform food systems is valuable beyond just New York City and valuable beyond just major cities. I think that there are a lot of countries that are really struggling with food insecurity and struggling with specifically like climate caused drought that are looking for more sustainable ways to grow food. And we can, I think, respond to some of those issues by having like an apprenticeship sort of model that allows people to go out and build out these food systems themselves, which I'd love to see. I'd love to see like the model that I went through with the program in Kenya be replicated in a way that sort of ties other people from other places together with the stuff that's happening locally for food systems in New York and in the US. So that's sort of where I see us going. I definitely would love to be able to have people all over the world growing food in our model and changing food for good.
I love it. That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Well, I hope that we have inspired some folks out there who are either thinking about starting a nonprofit or in the middle of starting a nonprofit or like beating their head against the wall trying to figure out how to be successful. Don't give up. Don't hit the panic button. You will be fine. And I hope that we inspire folks to really learn more about what you do and focus on agriculture. I mean, it's really important. I am so blown away by you.
Thank
Tell
you.
us, for any of the folks listening who want to get involved or make a donation to you, where can they find you? And give me a 30-second elevator pitch for your organization.
Absolutely. So if you want to donate or support our programs, go to changefoodforgood.org and click on the donate tab in the top right corner. As far as supporting our programs, we've been able to train more than 640 participants, secured nearly 150 job placements. Our students are averaging $26.60 an hour post-program with our programs. And we've distributed out over 8,000 pounds of food to 350 recipients over the last year. We've been doing really great work in New York City and beyond. We'd love to continue to expand it over the next 5 to 10 years. And we need your support. We'd love your support. Join our programs, register for our programs, and refer your friends.
Awesome. You are so awesome, Sam. I'm so beyond impressed. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think that our listeners should know about you, about your nonprofit, about just like, being a nonprofit itself, being a founder, being an executive director, anything that you want to share?
Just, I guess one thing I remember before I started this, there was like some online quiz from like some institution that calculates your likelihood of being successful as a nonprofit founder. And I took the quiz and I think I got like a 3% success rate. So if I would have listened to that, I probably wouldn't have done this. But I wanted to know what odds I was up against and how difficult it really would be and what areas were my gaps. So take that quiz if you can find it. I can't remember off the top of my head what that was. But anyways, regardless, even if it's challenging, even if it's something that you don't believe is likely to succeed, it's better to try and see where it goes and fulfill that sort of need in your heart to give back to people in the way that you envision and learn from that experience than to just sit back and not be able to do it. So go for it. If you have that dream, you have that vision, figure out what stands in your way and don't let it stop you.
Yeah. You're awesome, Sam. Well, thank you very much. I hope that you are enjoying your cantaloupe juice.
Yes.
I
My
hope
cantaloupe juice. Yes.
I hope that you are enjoying your cantaloupe juice. I finished mine and I really appreciate you. It is people like you who are transforming our world and making me happy to work in nonprofit. It was a pleasure to meet you, and I cannot wait until you expand into LA and that
Yes.
can help you grow here. So
One
thank you very
day,
much.
one day, we're coming.
Thank you very much, Sam. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Matt.
So what'd you think of our friend Sam?
The more I listen to her, the more I feel like I need to go out to my backyard and start like planting, or I need to invest in hydroponics. I don't know. How are you feeling?
What is so interesting is that this is my second interview with a founder of a food-related organization. So the first one was my friend Jen, who I went to high school with, who's now the founder of City Greens Community Farm, which is a like phenomenal organization dealing with a ton of stuff, but also the hydroponic piece was something she taught me. And now we're talking to Sam, who's on the other side of the country. So I'm really enjoying getting all these amazing founders and hopefully putting them together. I know we've introduced them, so maybe we can even just grow this collaborative of founders across the country.
Was that a pun intended with the whole grow the connection, or was that just a happy accident?
Damn, I wish I were that smart, but we had this conversation. I'm lazy and not a good student. So, damn.
I remember one thing you said when you talked to Jen. I feel like you were over at her house and you tried a hydroponically grown, is that a right adverb? Hydroponically grown lettuce, and you said it truly was the best lettuce you've ever had. To be fair, you've only ever eaten lettuce like one other times, but of the 2 times you've eaten lettuce, you said that was the better one.
Yes, I'm not a fan of anything but like fried food, which is not great, right? Definitely not great. And you can't fry salad. I wish you could. I mean, is there fried kale? Is there? I feel like there might be fried
There
kale.
must be.
There has to be, right? So, well, there's fried Brussels sprouts, and that's pretty close.
Those are good.
Those are really good. Now I'm getting hungry. But yes, Jen grew some really phenomenal, it's like yellow lettuce. It tasted just like lemon and it was so amazing and good. And I want it in a salad. So yes, Jen taught me all about that. These founders who are really starting these amazing organizations, I am blown away with. So all I want to say to everybody who's listening is keep sending in your questions. We do use them. They are really important and it's really helpful for the shows. So I thank everyone for emailing us, for bothering Ashley and getting your ideas on the show.
Yeah, I will give you my contact information, but also just a shout out to both Jen and Sam and others like them who are honestly, Matt, giving me hope for the future. Right? Like all we hear is doom and gloom and dire straits about the world. And with people like Sam and Jen, with their brilliant minds and their huge hearts out there at the forefront of such important work, I genuinely walk away with hope, and I'm so grateful.
Agreed. Agreed. It is, again, you're right. All the terrible things that are happening in the world, listening to this show makes me happy. So I think that's really important for our listeners to hopefully be having a good time. And Ashley, on that note, before we let everybody go, is there anything you'd like to talk to us about, share your insights with, your wisdom, or just tell us a little bit more about what you want to put in your rider?
Yes, I do like green M&Ms, so I'd go with like only green M&Ms if I were going to do a rider as opposed to like removing the green M&Ms. But other than that, like Matt said, we love the questions we're getting from all over the country. So if you have burning questions that you would like us to answer on future episodes, you can find me at ashley@envisionnonprofit.com, or you can DM us on Instagram or Facebook, nonprofit_on_the_rocks. Take care, everyone.